Well, welcome back to the Remarkable Life podcast, where we talk faith, leadership, purpose, and living a life that truly matters. I'm your host, Warren Curry, and I'm glad to be back in studio again with you guys on another episode of the Remarkable Life podcast. I hope that you all had a fantastic week this past week, wherever you may be listening to this podcast in the world, whether you're here in the States or somewhere outside of the U.S. Just hope that your week this past week was full of blessing, purpose, divine appointments, and just the evidence that God is at work in your lives. I know that I thoroughly enjoyed this past week for me. It was a milestone in my family. My oldest daughter graduated from college, so we were super excited about that. Had an opportunity to attend that graduation ceremony. My oldest son, who lives in California, and was already here for Thanksgiving, had come back for her graduation. So it was good to have his presence at that ceremony. That meant a lot to our family. And so yeah, I'm just always celebrating the milestones in our lives, in our families' lives, and I think that you should as well. And so I hope that you guys had a blessed week this past week. The Today's episode, well, I hope before I jump into that, I hope that you had an opportunity to listen to the previous episode last week, episode 14, which was on casting cares. I shared that or broadcast that maybe about a week or so ago. And then maybe a few days after the podcast episode dropped, shared an adjoining article, also with a free downloadable guide to help you kind of navigate and how to combat cares. Like I stated in that episode, cares is something that it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's when. It affects us all: financial cares, relationship cares, health cares, or concerns, what have you. And a lot of us are natural worriers or worry warts. Some of our lives are riddled with anxiety and various kinds and types of fears. And so, if you haven't listened to that episode yet, I would highly encourage you to do so. You can do so by going to my Substack, warrencurryjr.substack.com, checking that out. Download that free guide that, kind of is a practical tool to help you walk through some of the steps on how to combat the different cares in our lives. The Lord, or the scripture says that the Lord said to cast our cares upon him because he cares for us. And we weren't designed to carry any kind of concerns, not for an indefinite period of time, but we were called to cast those things onto him. So I would encourage you guys to go ahead and listen to that if you haven't had an opportunity to do so yet. But today I want to do something a little bit different. This is the 15th episode of this podcast, and I want to dive into a mini series, if you will, on decision making. Our lives, every day of our lives, whoever you are, wherever you're listening to this episode, all of our lives are um, encumbered with the various decisions and choices that we have to make each and every day. And I have learned in my 50 something years of life, especially the last, almost 30 years of, serving in some capacity of vocational ministry, that a lot of people really struggle with decision making. And what I mean by that is they don't necessarily struggle with coming to a conclusion about a certain choice that they want to make. What they do is they end up making really bad decisions, which impact their lives, obviously all of their lives, and those people's lives who are attached to their life. It affects it in a negative way. Let me just share this with you, and I would encourage you to either jot this down or just remember this: that decisions determines outcomes. And our lives are a sum total of the decisions that we make, and you want to make sure that the decisions that we're making, that we have to make each and every day, that they are God honoring decisions, that they are life giving decisions, that they are decisions that move our lives and our paths forward, and not something that sidelines us because of the poor choices that we're making. I heard this quote some years ago. I don't know if it originated with this guy, Bishop Dale Bronner, who was the one that I'm giving credit to this quote to, or if someone else have said it prior to him, and he got it from someone. He was the first person that I heard say it, and when I heard it, it just stopped me in my tracks. And, and excuse me, and subsequently, I've heard many people say it, after the fact. And I don't know, if they credit or attribute credit to Bishop Brown or someone else, but I will, because he's the first person that I heard say this as it pertains to decision makings. And he said this. He said that when you're born, you're born looking like your mother and your father, but when you die looking like your decisions or the decisions that you've made. And that is the God honest truth. The Bible says in Deuteronomy, I believe it's 30 and 19, that I have given you life or death, blessings or curses. Therefore, choose life so that you and your descendants may live. And we know this theoretically. But when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road and actually making decisions on where we're going to work, what school, we're going to attend or our kids are going to attend, who to marry, should I stay at this position that I've been in, for the last 20 years and move on, or move on, what car to buy, should I buy this house or should I buy this house? What church should I attend? What city should I move to? Right? You have all, what relationships in terms of friendship type relationships should I, engage or involve myself in? Should I eat this or should I eat that? Right. So our lives are encumbered with all kinds and types of decisions that we have to make every day. And I just think that sometimes we don't stop long enough to think about the ramifications of the decisions that we're going to make, because if we did, I think that we would probably take that approach a little bit better and a little bit different. Maybe we take a different angle. So I'm looking forward to sharing some nuggets, tips, tools over the course of these next few episodes, because for whatever reason, and mind you, I am not an expert in any sense of the word as it pertains to having made all of the best decisions in my own life. But what I am proficient in is I have learned from the mistakes that I have made. And so for whatever reason, I have been tasked really, like in life, by God, to be able to give people direction. I don't know if every pastor kind of operates like that. For most of y'all, that I serve as a local church pastor in one of my roles. And but I do that, and I actually find joy in doing that, helping people to gather all of the data, gather all of the information concerning whatever situation that they're facing, so that they can make a rational, logical decision concerning whatever aspect of their lives. And I enjoy giving guidance to people, and it's probably big part is because I want to see people win. I want to see people succeed. I want to see people excel. I want people to have a remarkable life. I want your marriage to be remarkable. I want your money to be remarkable. I want how you raise your children to be remarkable. I want you to, if you own a business, I want your business to, to succeed and excel. If you are, working in the marketplace in whatever capacity, I want you to have your cake and eat it too. I want you to be the best version of you, and that really boils down to y'all the decisions that we make. And so I find great satisfaction in helping people arrive at certain conclusions, and then seeing those decisions that they make turn out in their favor, and that ends up giving them favorable outcomes. And so yeah, so I want to just share those things with you guys, over the course of the next few episodes, because decisions determine outcomes. They just do, right? Our lives are, and I will, say this until I'm blue in the face. Our lives are the sum total of the decisions that we make. I know that a lot of times people, they get angry with God, or they're angry with this person, or angry with their husband, or angry with their wife, or just whatever. But a lot of the situations that we find ourselves in is because we chose those routes or those paths. And I realize, and I have the utmost empathy for people who are in, maybe situations today that aren't the best scenarios, that aren't the greatest living environments or situations. And I realize that the how we made decisions in our 20s are not like the way that we make them, hopefully, in our 40s or in our 50s, and that we've had to live with some of the outcomes of the decisions that we made in our 20s. But I believe that God is a redeemer of time. So even if you made choices then that weren't ideal, that didn't necessarily line up or align with His will, I believe that in many instances God can redeem the time for you. He can redeem unfavorable situations and circumstances, and truly cause all things to work together for your good, because you love Him and you've been called according to His purpose. And so I really hope that the stuff that I share over the course of the next few episodes with you guys, that that is really beneficial and is really a blessing to you all, as well. Amen. So as I alluded to, Deuteronomy 30:19, really kind of, sets a precedent for decision making, and, I quoted it, and I'll just read it again to you. It says that today, and this was, I believe, God talking to Moses and the children of Israel as he was leading them out of Egypt through the wilderness, and he was leading them into Canaan, the land that he had promised them. And even though, if you're familiar with that story, that even prior to Israel's existence, God had promised the Israel's forefathers, their predecessors, that He was going to give a certain a place, a geographical place, or land to them, because of His covenant relationship and agreement that He had with Abraham. And so, decades had passed, centuries had passed, and Abraham was no longer on the scene, but God, keeps His promises to His people. And one of the promises that He, wanted to keep was to Abraham, was to bless his children, to bless his descendants that came out of him and after him. And so it just so happens to be Moses who was leading them in this next leg of their journey or in their life. And he was leading them. He led them out of Egypt, which, they had been there 430 years in bondage. And then it led them through 40 years in the wilderness, prior to leading them into the place that God had promised to Abraham and subsequently to Israel. But if you're familiar with that story, that it was Israel's decisions that they were making to moan and complain and whine and all of this stuff, throughout their 40 years, in the wilderness, which was never designed to take 40 years. It was actually, most scholars, biblical scholars, say it was about an 11 to maybe, couple weeks journey it was supposed to take. But it ended up that we'll say less than 30-day journey ended up, spanning out over 40 years. And a lot of the reason why that it happened that way was because they kept complaining about everything. They made the decision to complain about every little thing that they could complain about. And and you just have to read the story of the Exodus. That's where their journey, the primary story of their journey, is found. And it was just, it was disheartening to see, these people who were supposed to, receive this blessing of real estate. Canaan, it was a blessing of real estate. And if you own real estate, you know that if it's properly managed and stewarded well, real estate can produce wealth. It can produce the accumulation of wealth. And so they were supposed to get that. And in the end, they got nothing. That generation end up dying in the wilderness because they made the decision to constantly cry, moan, and complain. And so, God said to Moses, and Moses said to them that today I have given you the choice between life and death, between blessings and curses. Therefore choose life so that you and your descendants may live. This one of the most disheartening things that I see when people make decisions is they don't think of the generational implications that subsequently follow the decisions that they make. I think that sometimes we don't think long enough, hard enough, or far enough to think that, man, if I make this decision today, how will this affect not just my tomorrow, but the people, my children, my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, how will it affect their tomorrow? And so, because it does, what we choose today affects not just our tomorrow, but many people's tomorrows. And so they were given this admonition: hey, choose life, choose God's blessings, don't choose his curses. Don't choose the wrong path, choose life so that you and your descendants, may live. And again, if you know the story, they would vacillate, they would flip-flop. One day they, want to choose God and choose his will and his way, and then the next day they would want to choose their own way, right? And we just can't afford to do that with our lives, because and I've said this often, that sometimes when we make certain choices, we can not only do decisions determine outcomes, but what also happens is that we can negatively impact and affect what we're trying to do, or what God is trying to do in us, with us, and through us, because of the decision or the lack thereof that we're making. And we just can't afford to do that. You know what I'm saying? And but I get it. I understand that there are so many different variables that factor into why people make the decisions that they make, why people refuse to make certain decisions. I know that some of us can be gun shy. I know that many of us have made decisions before in the past, and it's been painful, but the outcomes of those decisions that we've made have been very, very painful. And so it has made us hesitant to move forward with certain things again, particularly if you've had a rough life. Many of us have had rough lives because of decisions that we have made, or our loved ones have made, or our parents have made, or decisions they didn't make, because indecision is also a decision. And so a lot of times we try to escape responsibility from making a certain decision. And so we evade, making a decision, but not knowing that, or understanding that indecision is a decision. And so you can't be like, oh, I'm afraid. Yeah, this story comes to mind, is the parable of the talents. And where the story, or the parable of the story goes, that there was a ruler. He came across three servants. He gave one person a talent. He gave one two, and then he gave one five. So one person he gave 5 talents to, one person gave two, and then the other person he gave one to. And a talent was worth back then about a day's worth of wages. And so that story said that he went away on a long journey, but he had an expectation that they were to take those talents and to do something with it, not just sit on it, but to multiply it and do something with it. And so after this ruler had come back from this long journey, he saw that the one that he had given 5 talents to, he had invested it, essentially, and had produced 10 talents. The one who he had given 2 talents to also had multiplied it, and I believe he had 4 talents. And then the one person he had given the 1 talent to, said to him, "Hey, I knew you were a hard, kind of a hard man, hard taskmaster. I know that, you reap where you haven't sown. And so, I was afraid that I was going to lose what you had given to me. So I just took what you gave me and I buried it to ensure that when you came back, at least I could give you back what you had given to me." And in that story, the ruler said that he was a wicked and lazy person. And I just, and I feel that that same kind of a comparison sometimes can be made with us, because we take what God has endowed us with, blessed us with, gifted us with, and we don't do anything with it, or we do very minimal things with it. We never, a lot of us never live up to our potential. And a lot of the reason behind that could be because we've made certain decisions before in the past. Things didn't work out like we had anticipated. We experienced pain or loss as a result of that decision. And as a result of that decision, now we are indecisive about everything. And so I empathize with all of you all who feel that way. Maybe you move that way. Maybe you've been moving that way, and I get it. I made decision. I just I shared on the last episode that I just turned 51 a couple weeks ago, and so and then last month in November I just had my 28th year of celebrate my 28th spiritual birthday, salvation. And but almost 28, almost 30 years ago, I was making decisions that weren't beneficial. They weren't good at all. Decisions that landed me in jail, decisions that landed me in prison, decisions that landed me with bad credit, like all kinds of stuff. But like I said, in the exact same way that you can make poor decisions and you can have non-favorable outcomes, you can flip the script, make good decisions, and then be blessed with better or favorable outcomes, right? But you have to make a decision. You cannot lie in the valley of indecision, because you have made poor decisions in the past and you are afraid to make a misstep or another mistake or an error again. We can't do that. We can't afford to do that. Too much is depending on or riding upon the decisions that we're called to make, and so we've got to be willing to move forward, and it's imperative that we do. And so I see this a lot. So not just that, but also sometimes people mask their fear, not just with being indecisiveness, but they also mask it with trying to abdicate the responsibility and putting that on God that he actually put on us. And what I mean by that is that people will say, like, I'll say, "Well, hey, why haven't you made this decision yet, or what do you think about this, or just whatever?" Like, "Oh, I'm just waiting on God, I'm just whatever." And many of us have heard the cliche before that a lot of times, we say that we're waiting on God, but in essence, he is actually waiting on us, and to make a decision. Sometimes we just have to make a decision, not to be reckless or haphazard with it, especially when it comes to major decisions, right? Geographical relocations, who you're going to marry. If you're going to hitch your life to somebody for the rest of your life, you need to have some certainty about that, get some counsel concerning that, so on and so forth. Major decisions. Should I buy this house, or invest a lot of this money? Should I, you know, take money out of my 401k or whatever and invest it in this fledgling startup? You need to, weigh those things a little bit more, because the consequences or the ramifications are a lot more deeper. If we don't properly weigh those steps that we're going to take. But But a lot of times people, they'll say, well, hey, I'm waiting on God, or I need wisdom, or I'm trying to get discernment. We, especially as Christians, we mask our indecisiveness in spiritual language and lingo, instead of, moving forward in faith, so that we can see God's hand at work in the midst of what we're doing. This story is also in the Exodus. I think this was in Joshua, where it talked about how the children of Israel, they had come to an impasse in their journey. I believe they had come to the bank of the Jordan River, and here they are, millions of people, and they had been on this journey for some time. They're crossing over into, I believe, there was on the brink of Canaan, the land of promise, but this natural barrier stood in the way, this river, the Jordan River. And so they're like, man, what should we do, about this? Obviously, the river may have been too deep for them to swim. Of course, you got kids and animals, and adults and seniors and everything. So you just can't just dive in. So what do you do? And so I believe it was the priest or some of the men, I can't remember right now off the top of my head, who actually took a step forward. And as they took that step forward, the waters began to part and recede and move back. And as they did that, they were able to cross over that river. What am I trying to say? That sometimes you have to just have forward motion. And as you do that, then clarity will come concerning the thing that we are quote unquote waiting on. And so you gotta, so sometimes you gotta move forward. And I've experienced this a lot, often in my own life, that if I am, I'm unsure about something, I will move forward. And it has always happened without fail, that if it's something that I'm not supposed to do, or path that I'm not supposed to take, God always somehow, some way speaks to me and say, that's not the path you're supposed to be taking. You're supposed to go this way, not that way. And so, but if I never, have any motion or movement, then then I don't position myself to receive that instruction or direction from on high. And so I encourage you guys, don't be afraid. Don't be scared. Sometimes you just have to take a step. And as you take a step, God will lead you and give you light for your next step. Okay. And so let me just share with you real quick, just three crucial steps in the decision making process. The first thing is determination. Determination. Proverbs 25:2 says this: it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it is the glory of kings to search out a matter. Determination just, really means investigation. You trying to amass as much information as you can about the situation or the scenario that is before you, so that you can come to some kind of rational or logical conclusion. You have to, like that scripture said in Proverbs 25:2, it's the glory of God to conceal a matter. There's some things that we'll never know because God conceals or hides it. But he said it's the glory of kings to search out a matter. And so sometimes we have to search or investigate. If I had brought my wife on this episode, and you guys asked her, what is Warren Curry like with decision making, she would tell you, if I get a whiff of that, I think that I'm supposed to move in a certain direction, I will turn every rock and stone over, trying to find all the information that I can about this thing so that I can make the best decision possible. Just think that is part of being responsible in the decision making process, because some of us are just waiting, waiting, waiting on God to speak. Lord, I just want you to speak. I want you to speak. But sometimes he speaks through the process of you searching out, investigating stuff, putting together information so that you can come to a rational conclusion, like, oh no, after I've done all of my homework, and I've done all of my fact finding and my due diligence. No, absolutely, he is not in this at all. And so now I can go the other way. And so you have the first step in that decision making process is determination. You have, the act of finding something out. We have to do that. The second step in the decision making process is deliberation. So after you've done all of your investigation, you got all your homework, you've done all of your due diligence, then you have to deliberate on it. Deliberation, or to deliberate, you probably are familiar with the term in a legal sense. When a jury has been sequestered to come and sit, in a court of law in the U.S. somewhere to hear the facts on whatever case that might be before them, and they've heard the prosecution, the prosecutor's office, they've heard the defense, what the defendant, is, what their alibi was or what their story is, and then they have to take all the facts of that case that have been presented by both sides, and then the jury goes away. They come out of the court proceedings and they go away in a room for sometimes a couple of days, and they deliberate over what the facts of that case, right? All the information has been presented. They brought in the expert witnesses. They've heard all the testimony. They read all the reports. They have all of the information that has been made available to them. So, but then after that is done, they go away to deliberate, so that they can find, try to determine or figure out what's the best path forward. What's the verdict in this case? Is this person guilty? Are they not guilty? So on and so forth. So deliberate means to have long, careful, meditative deliberation, or consideration, so that you can come to a conclusion as you slowly and methodically and carefully and thoughtfully think about what the information that has been presented to you. You have to take time to deliberate. When I've been in situations and people trying to rush me, especially if you go in some things and they're trying to rush you to make a purchase, or hey, this car deal is about to go away. This the last weekend for this deal or whatever. Listen, if I haven't taken the proper time to deliberate on it so that I can come to a rational conclusion for myself, I'll say, hey, you know what, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and let this one pass, because another deal like this will come around at some point. It may take a year or more, but I'm gonna go ahead and pass and wait. Why? Because I need to take time to deliberate, pray, sometimes get counsel or whatever, so that I can make the best decision possible as it pertains to me and my family's life and livelihood. All right. So the second step in that decision making process is to deliberate, or deliberation. And then the third thing is, after you made the determination and deliberation, is to finally make a decision. You're going to decide at that moment, once you've done all of those things, what direction or what route or what path or what way you're going to go in. Am I going to marry this person or not marry this person? Am I going to buy this house, or I'm going to not put in an offer on this house? I'm going to turn that down, and I'm going to keep looking, with my realtor. Am I going to buy this car? Am I going to trade this car in? Am I, just what have you, whatever it is, you then have to make a decision, once you have done all your fact finding, all your due diligence, you've gathered all of your information, you've prayed, you got counsel, you've sat and meditated, you've thought about it, so on and so forth, then you have to make a decision. And in that moment, you have to be decisive. There's nothing, so frustrating to me than an indecisive person. You got to be decisive. I'm not talking about, again, being, a hot shot and being irresponsible with the decision that you make. But if, hey, you've done all of your homework, you've done all of the things that we should do as it pertains to a well thought out decision making process, then it is time to make a decision. Okay. It's time to make a decision. And if you're still uncertain or unsure, after, the determination process and deliberation process, by all means, bring someone in who, maybe a little bit more well traveled than you, have more experience than you, someone who, maybe has a more wisdom than you, someone that you can ask or pose a question to, and they can speak directly to you in your situation, in your scenario. And there's nothing wrong with bouncing things off people, and getting insight, based on the questions that you're posing, based on the information that's been made available to you. And so, so we have to do that so that the third and final step in that decision making process can come to pass or come to fruition, which is to make a decision so that we can move forward in a direction that that we're called to go in. And I get it. Again, I know, understand that some of us are hesitant because of the poor decisions we made in the past and how painful those decisions have been. I mean, we all know, all of us, I should say, I don't know if I should say all of us, but, the majority of us have felt the pain of financial mismanagement or poor decisions that we've made with our finances and how painful those seasons of life we're in. All of us have felt the pain of the decisions we made concerning relationships that we've been in, not just romantic relationships, but also sometimes friendships, or acquaintances, or whatever it was, may be. You've felt the sting of betrayal, or someone has betrayed your trust, or someone you confided, a personal, a deep dark secret into someone because you felt like your relationship was really on that level, and they took that information and they used it against you. I know I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt for it and the scars to prove it. Right? I get all that. I have said this statement for years in my context. Serving in the local church ministry. There's been a popular theme or concept that has been probably shared over the past maybe decade or so in the church world, talking about church hurt. And people say, "Oh, I was the church hurt me, the pastor hurt me, this person hurt me, that person hurt me." And so that's why I don't go to church anymore. That's why I don't call myself a Christian, or that's why I don't, just whatever. And I'll say this, no one gets hurt in the church more than a pastor. It's just, and their family. It's just a God honest truth. People lie on us, people falsely accuse us, people betray our trust all the time. People, try to use us for their own personal gain. People talk about us, talk about what we wear, what we drive, where we live, and they have no idea of the untold sacrifices. They have no idea of the anxieties that many of us have and or carry as we're simply trying to fulfill the obligations and duties of our divine calling. And the pressure that our marriages are under, the pressure that our raising our children in the public, excuse me, in the public spotlight, having to live a quote unquote a picture perfect life, and when you have one misstep, and again, and I'm not even talking about excuse me, nothing sinful, but just you don't live up to someone's expectation, or have to tell someone no or whatever, and then all of a sudden kind of all hell breaks loose, and then people leave, and oh God, they say God has led me somewhere else, and and I need to take a break and just whatever. And you have poured your life out, you've opened your heart up, you've walked with them in some of the most serious and painful seasons of their lives, and you've developed friendship and relationship and deep bond together, and then people just turn around and walk out of your life and sometimes don't even say bye, right? And so so no one is hurt in a church context or setting more than the local church pastor. And I call it being a sheep bites, being bitten by the sheep that the shepherd is called to lead. But nevertheless, because I've seen in my own other ministers' lives, I've had the privilege to see them and watch them and see like, oh man, they don't trust nobody. They've been pastoring 20, 30, 40 years, and they have a really, really small circle. They don't hardly talk to nobody at church. They don't do life with anyone or whatever. And I saw that early on as a young minister, and I was like, man, I never want to be like that. I just so what do you have to do? You have to, even when you get burned, even when your trust is betrayed, even though when you know people are talking about you and saying all kind of false things about you, you have to continue to open up your heart and love again, right? And trust again. Just because you got burned once and or twice doesn't mean that it's going to happen, over and over again. And so we have to. So I get it, but I can't. I isn't. It's not fair to present relationships to put pain on them from past relationships. That's not fair. It's not fair for me to do that to, future people, and it's not fair for you to do that to future pastors and or churches. Every church is not corrupt. Every pastor is not corrupt. Most of us have integrity and are really trying to just live an upright, a life before the Lord, and just do the right thing for the right reasons, all the time. And so, but I get it. When you've been burned, it's very hard. You look through those rose colored lenses of that hurt and that bitterness and that pain. And so, it's hard to trust again, but let me just reassure you that, that in the same way that, we've blown it, and God has, given us ample opportunity time and again, that He has the grace and the ability for us to be able to do that for people when we've received the short end of the stick time and again. We can love again, we can trust again, you can fall in love again. If you've been married and now you're divorced, and maybe the divorce was the most painful thing that you've ever been through, it doesn't mean that your future marriage, if you decide to go down that path again, is going to be the same, beloved. It's not going to always be the same. Some things, believe it or not, do work out. But I want to just encourage you to stop being afraid, to make a decision and move forward. Your life and your future deserves, you making good healthy decisions now, that will give you the life that you've always dreamed of. But if you just remain in a place of indecision, or remain in a place of fear and apathy, because you've been, hurt by past decisions you made, you're shortchanging your life, and you were called to live a remarkable life. And if you don't make decisions, that will move you in that direction, you will rob yourself of the life that God had intended to give you. So let me just encourage you with that. And let me just also encourage you with this as well, is that, one bad decision does not determine your life. You are not the sum total. You are not the decisions that you've made. I made decisions early on in my life, in my 20s, that landed me incarcerated. And people tell you, that when you've gone to prison, you're a convicted felon or convicted whatever. They're trying to tell you, you're a felon for life, and you're this, and you're that, or just whatever. And you're not. You don't have to be carry that label of the decision that you made. Okay, you had a child or children out of wedlock. Maybe you got, if you're a female, you got two or three baby dads. That doesn't mean that some man, the future is not going to love you because you've had two or three kids by two or three different men. Baby, we live and we learn, and when we know better, then we do better. And so one of the ways that we do better is by learning from those decisions, realizing that, okay, the things that I chose then didn't give me the outcomes that I wanted. Let me now start to decide to do, choose something different, choose something better. Let me get around people who I'd like to emulate. I don't want their life, but I see the fruit that their life bears. And so I want to have something similar in my own life, for my life. And so let me learn from them. Let me be mentored by them. Let me ask questions concerning, how'd you get here professionally? What classes did you take? What schools did you go to? What degrees did you earn? That can move me forward in that direction, in a professional sense. Ask the questions. Most people who are successful in whatever endeavor or area of life they actually welcome that. They love to give back and to help people move forward. So you are not, you don't have to be carry the stigma or this label that you are such and such, because you made those decisions at one point in your life. We're going to shake that dust off, remove those stigmas from our lives. And then we're going to move forward, into the areas that God has prepared for us so that we can live and lead the remarkable life that He has stored up for us. And so let me just leave you with this. I just want you to reflect on this today as you're listening to this episode. I just want to ask you three questions. What decision or decisions have you been avoiding? Just think about that. What decision and or decisions have you been avoiding? Why have you been avoiding it? And what is it costing you as you're delaying making that decision? Here they are again. What decision have you been avoiding? Why have you been avoiding making that decision? And what is it costing you as you are delaying that decision? What is it costing you because you haven't made that decision? So I'm just want to encourage you to reflect on that, think on that, and whatever it is that you have been delaying, it's time to put things in motion and move it forward. Because remember, sometimes clarity follows movement and not the other way around. And so I just want to encourage you guys, just with that, as we are wrapping up here today. So that's all that I have for this initial episode of this mini series on decision making. I pray and hope and trust that this episode, this 15th episode of the Remarkable Life podcast, I pray that it was encouragement and a blessing to you. I am always available for those that maybe you're in a place of indecision and you're like, Pastor Warren, I don't know what to do, where to go, what path or whatever route to take. If you've done your due diligence, meaning you've done the homework, you've done your research, you've prayed, you've fasted, you've done all of this stuff, and you're still unsure about what to do or how to move forward, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me, Warren at LifeChangers.church. I would love to be able to help you or provide some kind of guidance or insight for you so that you can move forward in the area that maybe you've been delaying in, so that you no longer are really being disobedient. Because I've say this and believe this, with all my heart, that delayed obedience is disobedience. And that's not what you want for your life. And I don't want it for my life. And I don't want it for your life either. Okay. So that's all that I have for this episode. I just encourage you guys to maybe share this with someone who that maybe they're in the valley of decision. They've got to make a big decision about, I don't know, something coming up soon, and they're kind of on the edge, not sure, what to do, what path to go down. I just want to encourage you to share this episode with them. Make sure that you guys subscribe to my Substack, because the future episodes that I'll be sharing along these same lines, they'll be coming out over the course of the next few weeks as we prepare to launch off into the new year 2026, and which we can set a fresh trajectory for the coming year by the decisions that we're making today. And so you see on the screen, this is my Substack account, warrencurryjr.substack.com. Encourage you to go subscribe, follow. You can see all of the previous podcast episodes, articles that I've written, free resources that I've attached to some of those articles. You'll find those there. And I would encourage you to do that, download it, and subscribe so that you are always one of the first to receive new content as I distribute it. Okay. So just hope that you guys enjoy this podcast. And just again, thanks for tuning in to the Remarkable Life podcast. And just always remember that growth isn't about perfection, it's about intention. I look forward to being with you all again soon. Thank you. God bless, and talk to you soon. Have a great week.